Where is the reforming zeal of the party that my grandparents voted for after the Second World War? Where's the Ernie Bevin or Hugh Dalton? Where is the reforming zeal of a new Labour government that came in 1997, led by Tony Blair, with people like Gordon Brown, Margaret Beckett, David Blunkett behind him?
And I now look to the Right Honourable Richard Holden MP to close the case for the proposition.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. President, for having me here today. I have noticed a little bit of a theme from a couple of the opposition speakers, and even one of the floor speeches, quoting, "For the many, not the few. Things can only get better. A new dawn has broken." They seem to have dropped the change slogan in their arguments on their side of the House. And there's probably quite a good reason for that, because the change people are starting to see in this country is not the change that they like, and not the change I believe many of them voted for. It is an honour to be here tonight, and I'll start my speech with some of my weakest arguments, then I'll steal and develop the much better arguments of Ms. Gadd and Mr. Robson. But there is something that I've noticed that our opposition speakers have been doing tonight, and that's been talking a lot about 14 years. They want this debate tonight to be about the last general election, not the government that's happening now. They do, however, conveniently forget the inheritance that that last government had: an 11% budget deficit, tumbling international school standards. They don't want to dwell too much on the inheritance that that government received. But the question is around tonight in His Majesty's government, do we have confidence in it? Well, when I was invited to give this speech, much like Mr. Elwood, who will be speaking shortly, I was actually invited to give it from the other side as well. But that means there's not total reason to just tear all of my possibly slightly pre-prepared remarks up on that front, because that's the part of the basis of the first part of my argument. It is very difficult to judge any government against nothing. So what do we need to judge it against? Well, there's three arguments I'm going to make tonight. The first one is I want to judge slightly against some of the points in the last government. Now, there's no doubt the last government, of which I was a part, but my phenomenal colleague was a backbencher in, didn't just lose the confidence of this House, it lost the confidence of the country. But it did get some things right. 4 million people more in work over 14 years, deficit down from 11% of GDP to 4% of GDP, standards in schools rising superbly according to international standards, a response to COVID. I thought AUKUS, it was a really important thing that we did. And I think when you look at some of the cultural issues, actually, the last government tackled, whether it was protecting free speech in our universities, or actually something which the Honourable member opposite didn't quite, I don't think, got right. I think our government's response to Ukraine, which was praised by the new Prime Minister, was actually on the right side of history. Now, it might be too early to really understand the failings of the new government, but as business confidence is being so successfully undermined at the moment, given what business is saying, I just think we need to bear in mind some of those things in context. But the bigger argument is against, rather than should we judge it against its predecessor, we should probably judge it against itself and what it told all of you at the general election. What it promised versus what it's delivering. It said it had a manifesto for change, protecting the poor and needy, helping the young to excel in lives, no tax rises on working people, reform of our institutions, including the House of Lords, smash the gangs and stop illegal migration, stop the deaths in the Channel, make us less dependent on foreign countries for our energy and cut energy bills by £300 per household, a government of service. They were this government's promises. Are you confident so far that you're seeing delivery in any of those areas? Well, what have we seen? 10 million pensioners removed the winter fuel allowance. 96% of them are not higher or additional rate taxpayers. In fact, the vast majority of pensioners in fuel poverty have seen this government remove their winter fuel payment. Tuition fees set to rise. Who voted for that? Taxes, which they proposed, are now being junked. Capital gains tax rises, non-dom rises, shows the sheer incompetence of the government and its proposals it's put forwards. Reform to the institutions is actually in reverse. They promised proper House of Lords reform. something that I think actually most sensible people could get behind. Instead, what we're actually seeing is a government reinforcing prime ministerial patronage, ensuring it's just him and God who choose people who sit in the House of Lords. No look at all. And on things which are actually important to places, like the Oxford Union, free speech. What are we doing? We're seeing a government going into reverse on that. A government virtue signalling to some of the people who it likes to support it, but is now taking the knee to the Chinese Communist Party and its apparatchiks around the world. Our enemy, on energy, we're seeing actually a government pushing for more to be imported, less stability. Bills on the rise are going up 8%. And I think on that final point that Keir Starmer spoke about on the steps of Downing Street, a government of service. Well, I mean, you can see it yourself. Tens of thousands of pounds for a flat for his own child in order to help him revise for his GCSEs. Backstage tickets to Tay in exchange for blue lights. Civil servants appointed without proper due process. What an absolute shambles. But I think perhaps the biggest thing to consider is the third strand of my argument today, which was actually around Ms. Gadd's point. Does it even have the confidence in itself? We've seen a Prime Minister, the most important person they've appointed, their own Chief of Staff, gone within 100 days. Who's actually running the show? Nobody knows. A journalist I spoke to recently said, and I asked him, do you think the internal chaos will end? He said, in reference to perhaps a previous Conservative Prime Minister, in the end, it's the principal who leads. We've been here before, it's from the top, and it's not going to stop. The people are already making their feelings known. Starmer is actually less popular with the British public, according to most of the major opinion polls now, than Rishi Sunak. But perhaps the lack of confidence that the public has should come as no surprise, as Mr. Robson said in his arguments. Starmer did get 500,000 fewer votes than Corbyn did in 2019. But you know he got over 3 million fewer votes than Corbyn got in 2017 as well. Perhaps that's because he wasn't actually, perhaps it's because there is no confidence in him before he got into office. And that was the point Mr. Robson was making. And now they're quickly doubting his competence now he is in office. Where is the reforming zeal of the party that my grandparents voted for after the Second World War? Where's the Ernie Bevin or Hugh Dalton? Where is the reforming zeal of a new Labour government that came in 1997, led by Tony Blair, with people like Gordon Brown, Margaret Beckett, David Blunkett behind him, or Harold Wilson's government, which I really remember a conversation I had with my grandmother who said, you know what, I really believed him. I was a new school teacher. I believed in the white heat of technology. There's Harold Wilson there with Roy Jenkins, Barbara Castle, who represented the town I grew up in, James Callaghan, George Brown. Where are they? What have we got? We've got Rayner, Lammy, and the crap Miliband brother. I mean, honestly, what are we seeing from this Labour government? Where are the big ideas to improve our country, build confidence, or transform our country? Change? Well, that's what we were sold. And change happened on day one when you got rid of us. Fair dues. But what is change for? Blair said that change in itself isn't enough. You've got to be changing for something. And I think the lack of direction, the lack of vision, as this side of the House have pointed out, is exactly what's hampering this government and why you tonight should have absolutely no confidence in it. In the words of George III in the stage play Hamilton, what comes next? We have absolutely no idea what's going to come next from this government. Absolutely no idea. But given what's happened so far, it could be absolutely anything. But there's a final point as well. Perhaps none of this is Starmer's fault. Perhaps our system is so broken that no one can do anything. If that's your view, then you can't have any confidence in the government either. In conclusion, what we're seeing is a government united by timidity. The common theme that they have, one of change, but there's caution, no clarity, no delivery. You can't have confidence in something if it doesn't know itself. What's this government for? Who's it for? Without those, we don't know the where, and the how, and the why are totally irrelevant. The last election showed there's neither the Conservative Party nor the Labour Party who had a mandate for this country. There is no confidence in this government. There was no confidence in them in opposition when they were trying to get in, and there's no confidence now. You don't need to support the Conservatives. You don't need to support anybody. But this government is absolutely no confidence. Thank you.